Welcome to We and Lewes, a podcast dedicated to celebrating the remarkable, creative, and energetic people who live in Lewes and are helping our community forge a collective soul as appealing as it is unique. These are their stories in their words. They are the we in Lewes. I'm your host, Kevin McGinnis. We're thrilled our guest today is a true Lewes original, Nate Landis. He's an artistic welder, founder and owner of East Coast X, where he designs and builds metal pieces for boats and buildings. He's also a boat builder, an inventor, a fine artist, and a serial enthusiast. On any given day, Nate's probably having more fun than we are. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at the Leanne Wilkinson Group of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services PenFed Realty. Leanne and her team have ranked number one in real estate sales in coastal Delaware for over 20 years, and literally a week after her own We and Lewes podcast was aired, moved up from being the number two to the number one nationally ranked agency for the entire Berkshire Hathaway real estate network. Coincidence? We'll let you be the judge. Leanne and her team make it easy, whether you're buying, selling, or just searching for the perfect home to start a family or spoil grandchildren. I can personally attest, they are simply terrific. Nate, welcome to the podcast.
What's up?
Your company, East Coast X, specializes in the fabrication of metal equipment for boats, such as T-tops, handrails, cooler racks, radar arches, as well as entire boats. Not everyone who's listening to today's podcast may know what a T-top or a radar arch when they're at home. What exactly are these things that you're building for boat owners?
I guess it's just a bunch of pipes that you weld together to cover up so people can get in the shade, and then you add all kinds of toys on top of that, rod holders and anything you can do to make it cooler, I guess. I don't know.
I've been to your shop, and I didn't appreciate this, but welding and creating high-quality metal products, you require a lot of really serious-looking power tools.
Yeah, there's some good stuff. I got a pretty serious metal brake, but that's more for like sheet metal. It's from like the 40s. The thing is ancient. I love it. It's like not anyone can use it because you got to do it like 10 times to get it right. But I don't know. Once you got it, you got it. And then, the welder is pretty serious. And then I got a crowner. The crowner puts like the arch. And for my business, like putting little arches in the pipe makes it 100 times better than straight. Like straight lengths just kind of look silly. But once you put a radius on it, then it's like, man, that guy knows what he's doing.
And then you have to grind, and right?
Well, there's a saying that, like, you're either a welder or you're a grinder. I try to be a welder, but some stuff requires like sanding off the welds. Like a lot of mill finished stuff, you can sand off the welds and then make it like they disappear. I like to say deleting welds.
This work can be dangerous. Have you ever had an accident?
No, never once.
Nate?
No. Yeah. I almost lost my thumb. I almost lost my arm. I mean, everything is because I'm always trying to make it faster. And, I had this one wheel. I called it the death wheel. It was like a 7 1/4 inch, carbon tungsten blade that goes for like wood. And I put it on a grinder without a guard on it. It was just, a lot of bad things can happen quick when you have power tools that aren't supposed to be used like that. But
well, I think on the one with the arm, you actually were able to get a few of folks working nearby to help you get to the hospital.
Oh, right? Yeah, that was a good one. I was using the death wheel, and I was using it upside down inside this. It was like this guy wanted me to build this like smokestack that looked like, you'd see on like those, what do you call them? The like cruise ships have the huge smokestacks. Mm-hmm. Well, he wanted the smokestack on top of his like ginormous boat. This is the boat, the Last Chance, which is like this boat was freaking incredible. But anyways, he wanted to hide a bunch of stuff in there, so I made this thing. It was super complicated, all these different crazy angles, and I was like, I just have to cut it the way I need to cut it, and the only way to do it was get on the inside there, and the saw got cut, or like got caught in a little piece, and then drove across my arm, and then got tangled up in my shirt, and my arm was like hanging. It didn't cut through the bone, but pretty much all the muscle. It was pretty gnarly. Blood squirts across the whole shop. It was pretty gross.
Why do you have X in the name of your company?
Oh, well, when I started doing it, I was kind of like, I want to do all this crazy stuff. I don't want to just do like normal stuff. And my dad was like, well, then you need to call it East Coast Extreme. And I'm like, Dad, that sounds stupid. And he was like, well, then just do East Coast X. And I was like, okay, I kind of like that. So it became East Coast X.
So there's no Elon Musk connection with
Why does he? Oh, yeah, the X thing?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. It's just, how did you become a welder?
So my dad started a business. He was working for a guy doing stuff and then ended up going out on his own. And I was probably maybe 12 or 14, somewhere around there. And there's all these welding tools in our garage. And I would get off the bus and I'd be like, let me see if I can cut this bike apart and weld it back together and make all these goofball, crazy looking, silly bikes. And I mean, kind of self-taught, I guess. Like I thought a baseball size weld on top of a 1.5-inch pipe was stronger, so I just kept welding it until it was like the size of a baseball. I was like, and then I would ride my bike around and be like, check out these welds. They ain't ever gonna break. Going back to the grinder more than a welder at that point for sure.
But did you sort of learn the business from your dad?
Well, so I was working for my dad then. I was out of high school and whatnot, working for my dad, and I was an in-shop guy for a little bit, and you can't do a crappy job around metal workers. Like, they pretty much get you in line pretty quick. Gets pretty rowdy down there, and you have to fall in line pretty good. So I learned to weld probably pretty quick. Everybody's so judgy. Welders are judgy, man. They just, that weld sucks. You're an idiot. So, you don't want to be that guy. But then once you get good enough, then you can say that this other guy sucks.
Oh, then you become that guy.
It's a vicious cycle, but man.
But so if I understand correctly, you were working for your dad with your brother. And this sort of triggered a memory for me because a long, long time ago in a city far, far away, my brother and I worked for my father. And we were spectacularly immature, colossal fools. And there were times we fought on the job. And I'm talking about actual physical fights, punches thrown, blood, so on.
Oh, yeah.
And sadly, this was a law firm.
That's good. That's good.
But I'm hoping you and your brother were more mature.
No, not even little. I mean, we were like the new guys on the block, and then we got picked on pretty bad. So like if I wasn't there, my brother would get picked on. But if I was there, then I was the youngest guy in the totem pole, so I would get picked on pretty bad. And then they would try to get me and him going back and forth, and it was rowdy. Like my dad has a metal shop, but his office was 25 minutes away or 15 minutes away. So when he left, it got out of control, and he never knew how bad it really was. But man, it was rowdy. And I remember one time, me and my brother got into it, and we were wrestling and just going after each other. And I can't remember. We probably had the shop doors open, and we ended up going outside, and we're wrestling, and our shirts are all tore up, and we're bleeding. And we see my dad pull down in the driveway, and I think my brother was probably on top of me, beating me, and then he quick got up, and I didn't understand why he quick got up, so I chased after him, and while I chased after him, he ran into the van, and then like the back of the van, he quick opened it and got in there, and I ran in there, and we started wrestling still, and he's like, stop, Dad's coming. And about the time he got that out, my dad pulled up like right behind us, and he's like, oh yeah, right, you're cleaning the van, is that what you want me to think? Another one was really good. They locked me in the bathroom. This one I kind of felt like I was like 007. So it was lunch break, and they locked me into the bathroom. And I was like, I could hear him like with all the clamps and stuff on the door. So I didn't even bother trying to open the door. I was like, is there any other way I can get out of here? And it was like a small bathroom. It's like a little tiny bathroom. So I kind of shimmied up and removed one of the ceiling tiles. And I was like, oh man, there's enough room above the ceiling and the drop ceiling that I can like squeeze over. And it's like, there's like just cables holding up the drop ceiling. And I'm like going from cable to cable, and I had to crawl across the break room, which where all the guys were. And then if I made it past the break room, I got into the parts room. And then I was going to take the ceiling tiles off and come down the parts room, and then just walk out of the parts room into the, break room and act like, how cool they're going to be. Like, how did he get in there? Well, I got pretty much over the parts room, and they said I could hear him in the shop. They're like, oh, let Nate out. He didn't get to eat lunch. Like, I feel bad for him. Like, someone go let him out. So they opened up the bathroom, and I'm not in there. So then they were like, well, he's not there, you know? And it only took a little bit of time till they realized I was in the ceiling. And the one guy was over in the corner, and he lifts open the ceiling tile, and he's like, he's over there. He's by the parts room. And I kind of was like, well, there's nothing they're going to do. Well, next thing I know, broom handle comes up through the ceiling tiles. And it was like in the Terminator movie or something, you know? It's like this broom handle goes up and then goes back down, and then it comes up and then goes back down. And then it hit me right in the ribs. And I just crumbled into a ball because it hit me, and I took the whole ceiling. The whole ceiling came down. And of course, my dad was there. And it's funny because like, you can get rowdy. And as soon as you know it's too bad, like everybody helps to fix it. You know what I mean? Like there's 6 people picking on you. And then once they realize like, oh, we're going to all get in trouble. Everybody solves the problem as fast as possible. So we had the roof back up, and we're taking all the broken ceiling tiles and moving them all over the shop. So the parts room looked good. Oh, it was bad. My dad's going to hear this, I'm sure. And he's going to be like,
yeah, I knew. He'll probably say, yeah, I knew.
Yeah, he probably knew.
Was working for your dad an opportunity to kind of learn not just the skills of being a welder, but also start to form some opinions about what you wanted to do with your life or not do?
I think I hated it. I think I hated it first. I remember, I'll never forget, I was working at this place, Blummer Chocolate. It's like a chocolate factory up in Pennsylvania. And it was the shop work was way better than the field work. I hated being in the field. So there was this terrible grinding. It was aluminum, actually, that we had to grind, but I didn't have the death wheel there. I had like this crappy, they're like 1/4-inch thick grinding wheel. It took forever to cut through aluminum. And nobody wanted to do it. And I was a low guy in the totem pole. So they're like, here you go, grind this thing. And then they all were outside like talking. And I'm like, how dare you make me do the hard work? So I would do it for like 5 minutes, and I'd go out there, and they'd be like, get back in there and do it. And like, you're not doing it. You do it. You get paid more than me. You get back in there and do it. And they're like, no, you're going to do it. So anyway, I'm like, I hate this job. This job's terrible. I don't want to do it. And then I came to my senses, and I realized like, I don't want to work for anyone else. I mean, my dad lets me get away with whatever, so I'll go back. But then I was in the shop all the time, and that was way better. And then I learned to weld, and you're always building stuff. And my dad was super cool about anything I wanted to make, I could just make it. I would be taking parts that he needed for some job, and I'm welding them together to make I wanted to make a mini bike and ride to California.
What? A mini bike and ride to California?
I had this idea. I was going to just build this mini bike like a Dumb and Dumber and ride it over to California. So I would take all my dad's metal and just start making projects. I probably made about 20 projects and finished one maybe. But he was super cool about me letting, use all his stuff.
What led you to believe that you had to build an aluminum boat?
Which one? Well, I mean, aluminum has come to be like my favorite thing to work with. I just absolutely love aluminum. I really hate any kind of steel, but stainless, I'll make an exception. Sometimes it's got to be stainless, but aluminum is I just love it. It's the best. And, my shop's kind of set up the best for it. So if I'm going to make anything, it's going to be out of aluminum.
But you build an aluminum fishing boat.
Yes.
That's gotten a lot of attention, has beautiful sidings on it.
Yeah, thank you. I had a stand-up jet ski, and I wanted to build an aluminum stand-up jet ski. And I remember I made this like template, this like full-size styrofoam template. And I was thinking about how I could make all the bends so I didn't have to weld it a lot. And there was like 6 foot of welding. And I was like, I'm not doing that. Forget that. It's too much welding. And then here I am building this freaking boat that's probably got like 300 foot of welding on it. But I started off small, and I worked my way up. The first thing I did was this. So I had this great idea. I want to build a dual-sided jet ski, like a side-by-side jet ski. And I used to take my stand-up jet ski out to the waves here at the point, and I would like try to surf them. And I'm like, this is so much fun, but you're all by yourself. I'm like, I'm going to build one that I can do it with 2 people. So 2 people can be like surfing these waves. It'll be awesome. And
you would be sitting, as you said, next to one another,
yeah,
not one
like
in front.
Side by side. Well, I kind of thought like, I don't know, man, did you ever see like they do this thing where it's like, it's this guy's riding a dirt bike and he's got like a sidecar.
Yeah.
And the guy on the sidecar has to do all this work to keep the thing from flipping. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do. Like, I'm going to build a jet ski where, the one guy's like working it in the waves to surf it. Well, by the time I got done the jet ski, I'm like, you can't surf this freaking thing. If it flips on you, it'll cut you in half. So it ended up just being like kind of like something to whip around in the marsh. It was pretty fun. But total experimental, just, one of those things where I didn't think I could do it, and I just went at it, and then I did. I'm like, that was crazy to start from nothing and get something.
I don't know anything, as you know. I don't know anything about jet skis, but I would think the ability to have a jet ski where two people could sit next to one another, I mean, that's got to be something that could really be popular.
Oh my gosh! Like when I'm building something, I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. Everyone's gonna want one. I'm gonna be rich. Everyone's gonna be famous. And then by the time I'm done, I'm like, nobody's gonna want this thing. I don't know. And I don't know. I do think my biggest problem is I want all this stuff, but it's the build that's really what's enjoyable for me. Like once I have it, well, I can't say that. This fishing boat I built is pretty freaking fun, but it's like the building process is where there's so much excitement for me. Like to create it, to fabricate it, to dream about it, and then to just like have it all come together. That's the best. And then get to enjoy it with people is just great.
But the fishing boat, I believe you built because you wanted to fish. Is that right?
And, I always wanted to build a bigger boat. I just, as soon as I think I can do it, I'm going to try to make it better and better and better and better and better. And I designed that boat that I built specifically because I like to go out to the rock wall. So it's basically like a diving, fishing, kind of wakeboarding boat that just basically from here to the wall. And I think it's done a pretty good job for that setup. And
when you go diving, are you free diving or are you going with a tank?
I mean, I can do both. I mean, I kind of like to do the free diving with spear guns. Scuba, I guess that's kind of cheating. Kind of feels like cheating, I guess. I don't know.
Have you seen Richard Martin out there?
I don't know that we know each other other than like we kind of know of each other probably, but I did see him coming over the wall with like this monster striper, and I was just bragging to my buddy about this big striper that I shot one time, and he's like that guy's striper? I was like, oh my gosh, there he is. But yeah, I did see him out there once.
Now, the fishing boat we're talking about with the aluminum, what does it have a name?
So my youngest daughter is pretty quick to come up with names for my boats. The one sailboat that I built, it was a red Ranger 26, and we cut it all apart and made the whole top of it aluminum. And I was like, all right, we need a cool name with like the word red in it. And before I finished the sentence, she was like, the Shredder. And I was like, done. So then when I finished this boat, I was like, all right, what are we going to call this one, Nevaeh? And like within, a minute, she was like, the Ripper. So it's like, like ripping around, and it's a good name for it. So it's the Ripper.
Now, there's a story I've heard about the Ripper being part of last year's Christmas parade. Is that right?
Yeah, that was his debut.
And you were skating behind the boat?
Rollerblading?
Yes. And you spotted someone famous in the crowd? What happened?
I cannot confirm nor deny that it was Ryan Felipe, but some of the girls from the soccer team were on there, and they were all googly-eyed because they thought it was Ryan Felipe. But anyways, I was kind of tending to this little kid, giving him a high five whatsoever, and I hear him hollering.
And you were dressed as at this time?
Oh, I was totally dressed as the Grinch. Okay. And I can't remember. I think it was $35 for this like Grinch costume, and I was like, dude, this is the most legit Grinch costume I've ever seen. At like $35, And but I had to have this mask on, and I don't know if you remember, it was like kind of a hot day. Like it was like real foggy, and it was just like, man, I was in pain in 5 minutes after I put the rollerblades on, and we had it was like a 3-hour process just to get there. So I was like spent. But anyways, like I kind of was like halfway through, I was like, well, I'm the Grinch, so I should start like harassing people like the Grinch would. So this one lady kind of like crossed in front of me, and I zipped over, because it's funny on rollerblades, like, the truck's only going like 2 miles an hour. But if you carve real hard, like it whips you pretty good, like across the street from one side to the other. And I got real close to this lady, and I said, "Give me your purse." And like, she was pretty freaked out. And then I was like, "Wow, it's kind of funny." But then I was like, instigating and trying to start a little trouble like the Grinch would. And I guess Ryan Felipe was on the other side. He's like, "It's the Grinch, do something, Grinch, do something." And I was kind of like, "Don't tell me what to do." But I was like, "All right, I'm gonna go steal his." I think I'm not sure if he had a GoPro or it was just his phone. But he was like filming me, so I skated over, and I tried to go yoink and like grab the camera out of his hand, but I had gloves. They were like Grinch gloves, so I couldn't get a good grip, and I was like tugging on it, and he won. He kept his phone, and then I just kind of skated off. But
I would assume he's a little freaked out because he thinks it's just a nice, normal little Christmas parade, and suddenly he's getting robbed.
Yeah, and I never really thought it all the way through, because if I did get it, then what's he going to do, chase me down? And I mean, that would have been a good advertisement if I got beat up by Ryan Felipe. That'd be sweet.
According to the Cape Gazette, you built you modified the shredder, and then you captained it to a first in the non-spinnaker class in the Cape to Cape Challenge, which I believe goes from Lewes to Cape May or the other way.
Yeah, so there was a couple of races that we did, and I think in the beginning we were doing non-spinnaker, and then spinnaker makes it like it's like a whole nother fun thing to do. So that must have been one of the earlier ones, but the last few we've done the spinnaker rounds, and it's a great race. I mean, I say that sometimes it's like the slowest race, and it takes forever, and you're like, oh my gosh, like multiple times we've come from Cape May to Lewes and nobody finishes because the current, we have to go by the lighthouse, the outer wall lighthouse, and that current is ripping so hard there, and like the wind dies and you're just stuck, and like half the boats are like, forget it, they turn around and leave. So it's every year I'm like, listen guys, we have to go really far north because it's going to get us, and it still does every single year. You
also have crewed on some ocean going sailing.
Oh yeah. I mean, the sailing community, shout out, you guys are the freaking best. I mean, literally, I got this boat for $1 and I just started hacking it apart. And when people found out that I was cutting up this boat, they would just stop in. I'm like, I don't even know these people, but they're like, I heard you're like building a sailboat. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, you should do this. I'm like, why? And they would just sit and tell me all this stuff. I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. All right, cool. I'll do that. Yeah, okay. So
let's go back for a second. How did you get a boat for $1?
Jim Phillips had this boat sitting out there. And so Captain Speed, if anybody knows Captain Speed, one of the coolest people I ever met in my life, he passed away, and then he handed everything off to Stormy, which is probably the second coolest person. And Jim Phillips was worried because he had some kind of deal with Captain Speed that he didn't have to pay for the boat slip. And then, like turning over hands, he's going to have to pay for this boat that he never uses. So he convinced me that I needed a sailboat. And then he told me I couldn't have the engine. I could only have the boat. And I'm like, what the heck am I supposed to do with this? And he sat on it for like a week, and he's like, fine, you can have the whole thing. So he gave me the whole boat and the motor and everything, but for $1. And I did pay him that $1. I did.
In addition to boats, you also work on a variety of land-based projects. Last time I was in your shop, you were building a fence for St. Peter's, the Episcopal Church here in town.
Everybody calls it a fence. I like to call it a railing. I don't know.
I'm sorry.
I don't really care. I'm just kidding. But you're like the second person that's been calling it a fence. Yeah, it's just it's a railing that goes around there. And, when you do Randy's jobs, he likes to make everything fancy. So it's good outlet,
But so when you do something like that, you seem to design these projects pretty carefully.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know, man. I hate building stuff in my shop to measurements because I'm always so nervous that it's not going to work. So I like to just, like just this morning, I built a section that before it's just tacked together and make sure it fits before I actually weld it. Like my dad, all the time would be like with a tape measure, and then he would give it paper to everybody, then we weld it up, and then we get there and it's like, this doesn't even fit. Oh, we'll make it fit. And you have to cut it and do it. I'm like, it's like nerve wracking to try to do something on paper and then actually get it to fit in the field. So I tend to just be back and forth trips to it till I know I got it.
And you have built shelves and related things in quite a few restaurants around town. Is that right? Or stores around town, including this one.
Yeah, this one turned out pretty good.
Did you measure this all up, or did Matt give you a whole set of directions?
Man, we were like back and forth with all kinds of. Remember that drawing I had was all kinds of different colors to try to see like what was behind and what was front. The iPad, man, you got to have an iPad these days. But it was kind of a fancy technical design, but turned out really good.
And then there's the art. You create incredible sculptures. I wish we had a video associated with this podcast so we could show some of your work, but it really is unique. I know you've created a metal marlin. You've also created a very large whale, which is right now hanging in your shop. When do you have time to make these pieces?
Oh, man. I don't ever have time. Owning your own business, like, I'm kind of responsible for what if I told a customer I want to get something done, I need to get it done. And then I want to have fun. So I have this like philosophy that you should do something for 2 hours every day that's fun. But then is that irresponsible? Probably. But, it's kind of, juggle it a little bit. But the whale, I think I was just like, I think I went out to see a friend of mine in Hawaii, and we were like, dude, we got to do this whale. He saw the marlin, and then he's like, you got to do a whale. So he inspired me to get started on it. And then they were here, and I was hoping that I could get it to them, but I didn't get it done in time. So they had a shipping container. It's so hard to get something to Hawaii. But anyway, so I didn't get it done in time to give it to them or send it with them. But yeah, that was a good kick in the butt, but I did not succeed. I didn't make it.
And how big is the whale?
It's 12 foot. It's a 12-footer.
You grew up in Pennsylvania?
Yep. Pennsburg.
And you often talk about surfing, and
Yep.
you talk about skateboarding.
Yep.
These are not normally activities you associate with Pennsylvania.
I was kind of like the skate rat or the fruit booter, I guess. But I did snowboard quite a bit in the wintertime there. They had a sweet mountain. It used to be Doe Mountain. Props to anybody that hears this that knows about Doe Mountain. So it was just kind of, I had to do it. I think actually I was working for my dad, and there was this guy, Wayne Zook, awesome guy, and he never saw the ocean his entire life. He never saw it. And one day at work, he told me, he's like, yeah, I never seen the ocean. I'm like, are you serious? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, dude, after work, we're going. So we used to get off at 2 o'clock in those days, and off we went. We went to Surf City, New Jersey, and there was a Ron John there, Ron John Surf Shop. So I bought this like total kook 9-foot. It was this orange board with flames on it. I was like, yeah, it's the best one. But yeah, and then I would literally get off work at 2 o'clock, and we'd shoot down there and surf. And oh, this is funny. So back in the day, they didn't have, it was right when caller ID came out. So I'd call the Ron John Surf Shop, and I would say, hey, what do the waves look like today? And they'd be like, man, it's no good. And I'm like, all right. And I'm like, I got nothing else to do. I'm going to go down anyway. And the waves are awesome. I'm like, man, it's awesome. So I would call them again, and I'd be like, what's up? Are the waves any good? And they're like, yeah, man, their waves are awesome. So I'd drive down there, and it's like flat. Well, here I figured out, they saw the caller ID, and they knew I wasn't a local, so they were telling me the opposite of what it was. Well, me and my buddy, we would call, and they'd be like, dude, it's flat. And we'd be like, yes, dude, go. So we outsmarted them, I guess.
Now, do you surf here?
I try to. I don't know. It's not like it used to be. It's like crowded, man.
Oh, is it really?
So crowded. Naval jetty, man, gets too crowded for me.
Is that because Matthew McConaughey made the movie here and it got popular?
I highly doubt it, but and I remember the first time it was in some kind of like surf journal or something like that. The Naval Jetty showed up at the surf journal. I remember I was so like, yes, it's so freaking awesome. And then like that next year, I'm like, who are all these people? why are there people here everywhere? And then it just got more and more crowded around here.
When did you start wearing dreadlocks?
Way back in the day, I guess, man, I don't know. I guess it was like 25 years ago I started doing the dreads.
Have you ever cut them off?
Is that where you want to go? Are we derailing to this now? Because this is going to go a whole nother road, But that's fine. So God told me one time to cut my dreadlocks off, and I'm a Christian guy, and I chase after Jesus to the best of my ability, and I hear from him time to time, and I happen to be like praying for a friend of mine, Chelsea, and I just felt like God was saying, how far will you go, Chelsea, for your healing? How far will you go? And I just remember thinking like, man, this is uncomfortable for me, but like, I want to do what God's telling me to do. So I kept doing it. And I remember I was just like, man, so like later that night I was in the shower just thinking about it. And I'm like, man, like, why did you make me do that? Like, I didn't want to make someone feel awkward about it. Like, I didn't like it. And then I heard him say, how far would you go? And I was like, I'll go as far as you want me to go. Like, I shouldn't have probably like had that much oomph behind it. But he's like, would you cut off your dreads? And I was like, what? And then I was like trying to convince myself that it wasn't God that told me to cut off my dreads. And I'm like, no, that doesn't make any sense. That's like, there's nothing spiritual about that. And I told my wife, and she's like, no, that's not what he wants to do. And then I kept asking, and I got no reply. I'd be like, God, do you really want me to like cut my dreads? And I got no reply, nothing. It was like, for like 3 or 4 days, just nothing. I'm like, I got to do it. I got to cut them off. And then I had my wife cut them off, and my girls were little at the time, so they never like knew me without dreads. And I thought like we'll go on the back porch, cut them off, and all these angels are gonna start singing, and it's gonna be this like eclipse is gonna happen, and all this crazy stuff, and nothing happened. It was really depressing, and I was like, this sucks. And then I was youth pastor at the time, and the kids are like, we used to have the cool pastor, now he's just normal. And I'm like, oh, man, I couldn't believe how much that hurt. And I was like, oh, man. So there was like a little bit of identity stuff I had to get rid of with like, But then God did tell me after I cut him, he says, now we're gonna do them again, and this time we're going to do them right. And I'm like, okay.
I know you're a man of faith, and when you say, is this a thought that you hear, or do you actually hear a voice?
All right. I got a good one. So, first off, my wife's incredible. She's amazing, just to get that out there. And her dad is the pastor of House of Praise for All People, which is where I've been going since I met Heather. And, I'm dating Heather, and we're coming down to church. I'm just like, man, like, the church is just on fire. It's like awesome. And it was like, man, like I grew up in church, but like nothing felt like it did, here. So I'm like, all right, well, I kind of want to know Jesus a little more. So I had all these questions. I mean, millions of questions. And I would be calling Heather's dad, like, me and my buddy were calling him like 3 times a day. Like, tell us about this, tell us about that. And he's like, why don't we just do a Bible study? You guys all come to the house and we'll do a Bible study. So we do this Bible study. It's been going on for like a year. And this one lady, Lisa Swartzentrooper, a friend of mine, she says, yeah, God told me this. And I just had enough. I had enough of people saying that. I was so frustrated. I was like, interrupted her just like in the middle of what she's probably going to say something really awesome. And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean God told you? Like, explain to me what you mean. So she tells me, she says, go home tonight, shut everything off, and ask God a question, and he'll answer you. And I'm like, I'm gonna do this, and it's not gonna work, and I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna tell you, and you're gonna have to like figure this out with me, because that's too simple of an answer. And sure enough, I go home, and of course, like we have on McPhee Street, shout out McPhee Street people. Our house is on McPhee Street. At the time, we had like the worst windows in the entire world. Like they like were like solar panel windows. So like the only air conditioner we had was in our bedroom, and it was blowing right on top of me. So I'm laying in my bed, and Heather's asleep, and I'm like, all right. I said, what's heaven like, is what I said. And I hear this voice, and it says, take a deep breath. And I'm like, all right, there's no way that I would have come up with that. But I'll tell you this, like when God speaks to me, it's my voice that I hear in my head. But luckily, I'm not as smart. So when something really smart happens, I'm like, that was God. So he says, take a deep breath. And I'm like, all right, if God's asking me to take a deep breath, I'm going to take the deepest breath that I've ever taken. So I let all my air out, and I just start inhaling this awesome, it was like cool, fresh air from the air conditioner. And when I get to the tippity top, I can't inhale anymore. God says to me, heaven is like you keep inhaling. Like you keep inhaling. And I'm like, I'm not smart enough to put any of that kind of stuff together. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that just happened. And it's been a journey ever since.
After this moment, you've had other instances where you feel God talked to you, or God gave you direction.
Yeah, I will say that have you ever seen the movie Braveheart?
Yes.
The Irish guy or Scottish guy? Which one was he? It's my island. That guy, yeah.
Irish.
So I remember.
Is this the one who says, I talked to God today? And
yeah, he says, I'm going to get out of this, but
you're
he's not
screwed,
so sure about you.
But you're screwed.
Yeah. But I remember I always loved that guy, and I was like, man, I want that kind of relationship. I want to be able to talk like that. But I don't get questions and direct answers. I mean, that one time I guess I did, but maybe I'm not trying hard enough. I don't know. But either way, like sometimes I just get stuff. Like if I don't know, sometimes it's just like a highlight, something gets highlighted to me, and then other times it's like exact things. And I think other situations where I'm about to cut off my arm, for instance, or fall off a ladder, for instance, like those kind of times he chimes in. And I'm a terrible listener, and I'm very stubborn, and I'm learning my lessons. One time I was up this ladder at my shop, and I'm at the top of the ladder just putting stuff up in like little storage area I had. And the Holy Spirit says, the ladder is about to fall. and I heard it clear as day. And I knew it was not me, because why would I even be thinking that? But it was like, the ladder is about to fall. And I said, no big deal. I'll just grab this rafter. And as soon as I thought that thought in my head, the ladder dropped out. And then I went to like grab the rafter, because I'm like, look, it's clockwork. This is exactly what I said would happen. Well, I couldn't grab it in time. So I like fell down and busted my knee all open on the table that was underneath it. That was a trip to the hospital. And then when I cut my arm real bad, I was in there, and the Holy Spirit was like, hey, this is a bad idea. And I literally said, I do this all the time. And then about, 30 seconds later. Oh,
this was just before you cut?
Yeah, it was right before I cut my arm. Like, this is a bad idea. And I was like, I do this all the time. And then I was, so.
Now, did you have an experience when you went on a trip down to North Carolina?
I wonder what that anniversary was. Maybe our 10th year anniversary, me and my wife. So we're down in North Carolina, and, I get there. I want to go surfing. We're there for like 3 days. And the first day, it's like the waves are just too big. I can't get out. I'm trying to get out. I can't get out. It's like 7 foot or something like that. And then the next day, I'm trying to get out. I can't get out. Like, I can't even make it to the first break. I'm just getting washed back in. And then the next day, it said it was going to be 5 to 7, which is like, I think it was like, 7 to 8 or something like that. And then it was going to be 5 to 7. I was like, oh, smaller. This is going to be my day. Well, I wake up, and it's like rainy, crappy day. Nobody out on the beach. And I'm like, whatever, I'm going out there. I can't get out. I'm getting washed back in. So now I'm like, all right, what the heck? What am I going to do? So I said, God, flatten out the seas so I can get out there. Like, make everything go flat. Jesus did it. Like, come on, make it all go flat. Let's go. And one of those times what I heard, he says to me, he says, if I let you catch one, you'll only be encouraged to catch more. And I'm like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, I thought you loved me. Like, who would say that? Like, what do you mean? And I just was like, that wasn't God. And I just was like, shook it off and jumped in the water and started paddling out. Well, it goes completely flat. I mean, flat. And if you're ever a surfer and like you're trying to get out, there's like this like kill zone where like you can make it there pretty easy, but then you have to get through this next section. And if you don't get through that next section, you're going to get washed back in. So I'm like paddling. I'm right in this like kill zone. There's like 3 of them, because it's like 3 different sandbars. So I'm paddling the first one, and I'm like, my arms are getting spent because I'm paddling as hard as I can, because I think waves are going to just show up anytime. So I make it past the first one, make it past the second one, and now it's like big time. I'm like, I have to make it past this third one. So I'm telling you, it was like flat. But I'm still paddling as hard as I can, because I think waves are going to come any second. So I get out there, and by the time I get out there, I'm totally spent. My arms are just trash. And I don't even surf. I had just trunks on. Now I always surf with like a rash guard that's like thick enough that because I don't float, I sink like a brick. So I'm out there, and the first waves build up, and dude, they are huge. They are way out of my league, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to get out of here. I did not feel comfortable. I don't want to be here. And I'm looking at the shores so far away, and I was like, I just got to catch a wave and get out of here. So the first wave I went to catch, I don't know if I bailed on it or what happened, but I was like, that one was no good. And I turn around, and this just massive set is coming. And I'm like, I don't even want to be out here anymore. So I kind of paddled out to get, in the right position. And I started taking off on this huge wave. And I'm like, this is just too gnarly. So I try to jump over the back of it, and my leash just snaps. I mean, instant snap. Board's gone. Like, the board washed all the way ashore. And I'm like stranded out there. And I'm like probably, I don't know, maybe like 100 yards past this pier. It's Avon Pier down there. I think the pier is like 700 some feet. And I'm like 800 feet out in the water, just like stranded. And I'm swimming as hard as I can. And like, I don't even know time. I don't know how much time was going by, but I sink. So I'm like, I have to get in because I can't just float. And being a surfer, they tell you like, if you're in a rip, you need to just drift out and swim to the left or to the right. Well, when you're in the water and you swim to the left or right, you don't know if you're going to end up in another rip. You know what I mean? Like, it's like it's way scarier than you think. So anyways, I'm kind of panicking, and I'm trying to stay calm, and I'm just like crying out. I'm like, Jesus, come and get me. Cause like, this isn't good. Like, you got to come and get me. And like, I just remember, like, I don't know if anyone's like in a situation where you're almost dying. It's like, your faith is like, it's like nitro charged, So I was like, 100% Jesus is coming to get me. He's going to pick me up. This is going to be a cool story, And I'm getting my butt kicked, and I'm to the point where I can't tell what's up and down anymore. So it's like it's basically over, and I'm like under trying to like get up and don't know where I am. And I remember thinking like, man, this is it. It's over. And then I was like, what's it going to be like when my wife comes over the dune looking for me and I'm freaking dead? So I'm like, that's not cool. So that gave me like a little bit of encouragement to like fight a little harder. And I'm just like still struggling. And then next thing I know, you know, and the funny thing was the pier was just so daunting because I'm trying as hard as I can. And, you know, like when a wave comes, like you have like some power with the wave to try to swim in. And I would swim in as hard as I could when the wave got there. And then I would just be normally swimming. And then when a wave came, I would swim as hard as I can. And I'm just looking over the pier and I'm not getting any closer. And it's just like daunting. So then I must have got, and I remember I was just send a huge wave and wash me in. Like I got washed in this whole other time. Send me a big wave and wash me in. So then I'm like, I look over at the pier and I'm like halfway in. I got washed halfway in. I'm like, oh my gosh, I might survive still. I might be able to survive still. So I'm paddling, screaming, yelling, help. You know, like it was bad news. And these people, I can see them on the beach are like, you know, they're waving their hands like, come on. And I'm like, I can't come on. I'm freaking drowning. And I remember I was saying, come and get me. And, you know, they didn't come and get me. And which turns out the one girl that was in that group, she went out and she almost drowned. And they had to rescue her. So they weren't coming after me. So I'm swimming. I finally get to the beach. And, I mean, the waves are so big, it just washed me up on the beach. And I felt the guy grab my hand because they came into like their waist to get me. And as soon as he grabbed my hand, I'm telling you, like, there's nothing left. I just went limp. And I'm like, it's up to you. I remember thinking, like, it's up to you now. You know what I mean? Like, I got nothing. It's up to you. And he kind of drags me up the beach a little bit. And, you know, just the way my life is. I think I'm safe. And then a freaking wave comes from behind and grabs me and sucks me right back out. And I was like, I was so close to staying alive. And now I'm gone. Well, this time they grabbed me and they pulled me all the way up. They drugged me all the way up the beach. And I thought I was just being like chill and super grateful for being alive, but apparently I was convulsating and like coughing up foam, I guess. And they must have called 911. So then the you know, the surfing guys, the lifeguards are out there. They're like, "Do you know anything about secondary drowning?" I'm like, "No." And they're like, "That's when you inhale a lot of water and you drown on land." I was like, "Perfect." And but anyway, so I was struggling. I mean, I couldn't even pick up my head. I could barely even move. And I'm so covered in sand. I'm just like nasty. It's all in my ears. It's like in my mouth. It's just, there's so much sand on me. And I'm like, please just help me up and get me to the water so I can rinse off. And about the time they got me to my feet, I looked to my left and there's Heather standing there.
Oh,
And
no.
I remember I was like, "Hey, babe, what's up?" You know? She's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I was out for a swim and these guys came to help me." But yeah, it was one of those, you know, you cherish everything after that. You know, I remember thinking like, this is the best cup of coffee I've ever had in my life. Like, this is the most comfortable pillow I've ever put my head on. You know, it's like everything is just like fresh and brand new, I guess. I was a youth pastor and I used to do this thing, which kind of sounds pretty silly, but I used to sit in my hot tub and I would like, you know, try to do like a lesson plan for the kids or whatever. And I would like interview Jesus in my hot tub. Like he was sitting right there. And then I would have like the rest of the youth group kids like asking these questions. And then it would kind of be like, you know, I'll ask Jesus whatever your question is. And then I'll tell you, you know, on Monday nights when we do Bible study. Anyways, so I'm like asking these questions and it was somewhat effective for me. And before I could stop my mouth from saying it, I said, "Where were you when I was drowning?" And I remember I was like, I don't even know that I said it physically, but I physically cupped my mouth in the hot tub. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't mean to say that. And he took me and showed me where he was. And this is where it makes me cry every single time. Because he said to me, when you were crying out to me, I just dove out of heaven to come save you. And like, it wasn't like he put on this Superman cape. He just saw that I was drowning and I was crying and screaming, and he dove out of heaven and he landed right next to me. And the two of us were struggling just to get to out of where the rip was and just to get to the inside. So the section where I didn't know where up and down was. And then I ended up like, you know, the next reef or the next sand break in. I just believe that that's where Jesus was helping me get there, because I pretty much wasn't conscious enough to get myself there. But
You've had these experiences. You've heard warnings. You've heard guidance. Are you more receptive to listen now?
Yeah. Yes. I don't know if it was a pride thing, but yeah, I've been getting better. I do know that one time, I work on boats all the time, and all these walk-arounds, they always have when I'm putting the top on, they put an antenna. They have it mounted on the side, and the antenna sits down. It's kind of tucked below the gunnel, and I'm stepping over in a ladder, and I always step on it and break it. I crush them all the time. And I'm like, now it's like $120 to replace it. Well, I was climbing up the ladder, and the Holy Spirit says, there's a antenna there. Don't step on it. And I stopped my foot, and I was like, oh. So I'm like, I'm listening now. So I don't know. I'm doing my best. It's not the easiest thing.
Is Heather the most patient person in the world?
She is the best. Like I mean, she puts up with me, and she does it with grace, Although I probably use up all of her grace for other people, maybe, but she's pretty good.
You have 2 daughters.
Yep.
Are they like you?
So even when they're little, McKenna looks like me and acts like Heather, and Nevaeh looks like Heather and acts like me. So that's kind of how it's been. Which is good. It's good.
Do they embrace all the things you're doing? They obviously embrace the boat. They like the boat.
I don't know that they like the boat. I mean, Nevaeh likes the boat. Nevaeh is she's more like, she likes to try all kinds of different stuff. McKenna tends to get seasick, and I think she doesn't trust her dad, which is fair. So if I tell her it's going to be fine, she knows, which she looks like me, but acts like Heather. So I'll tell Heather it's going to be fine, but Heather knows, and McKenna knows. But Nevaeh is like, let's find out. So,
Nate, you seem to approach every day in your life with enthusiasm and absolute fearlessness. You wanted to fish, so you built a fishing boat, and now you can't fish enough. You wanted to sail, you got a boat, modified it, won open water races, and have crewed for others. You own a business, surf, spearfish, dive, and became so fascinated with pizza, you spent more than a year trying to perfect the best crust. And of course, you built your own oven. How would you summarize your approach to life? Or should I say, what's your life philosophy?
At default, I'm a dreamer, and I believe that, I think God created us all to have this amazing destiny, but it's up to us to pursue it. And I think that every dream that you do, like just something you love, something that like you want to create, something that you want to get into, I think every time you take that step, number one, I think God supports you in that. And then number two, I think it leads you closer to who you're actually meant to be. I don't learn anything unless I fail, and failing is the greatest thing. Like Heather, she probably wants to surf, but like for her to fall in front of people, she feels like there's all this like anxiety. But I'm like, you have to just fall. You know what I mean? You have to like wipe out. And back in my rollerblading days, like, I'd be trying to do some rail, and I would be doing it, and I wouldn't be able to like get the whole rail because I'd fall off. And I'm like, well, I need to teach myself to fall off the opposite side. You know what I mean? You have to like go purposely fall off the opposite side so you get a feel for that, so that you can get right down the center of it. And I just think in my life, I'm like, if I get it on the first time, it was total luck and I learned nothing. But if I fail like 5 times, every single time I get better, and that's like permanent. The more fun, awesome, cool things you do, the better you are at being yourself, and the happier and the more exciting you are to do everyday life.
So you believe that we weren't here to be bored?
Oh my gosh, no, totally not. I think at a young age, I was like, this is dumb, I'm not doing it. And I want to have fun. I think that probably frustrated my parents quite a bit. But I think that's what everybody should be doing. Everybody should be doing what's fun. And I also think if, like, for the younger listeners that are out there, like, if you just, like, sell out to, I'm going to do what's fun, and I'm going to get good at it, and then I'm going to get paid to do what I like that's fun, I mean, you win. That's what it's all about. You'll get better at it. Like if you start young doing what you like, you'll get good at all the things you like, and then you can make that, your life. One day I want to sail, one day I want to make art, one day I want to build a boat, one day I want to do this. It's like you never know what I'm going to want to do, and I kind of like that, so it's probably why I don't get very far. But I'm having the best time ever. So.
Nate, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. One of the joys of this podcast is learning how others pursued their dreams, had the courage to jump at opportunities, and had faith in something other or bigger than themselves. And some days, We in Lewes is not just a podcast, but a life course. And Nate, my friend, few I've ever met have embraced life with the same relentless enthusiasm and joy you bring to the day. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for joining us.
You got it.
Thanks to today's sponsor, the Leanne Wilkinson Group. No one knows the Lewes market better than Leanne and her team. Let's be honest. There's a reason they're number one in the entire United States, and it's not a secret. They're really, really good. And thanks to you for listening, for spending time with us, and for the kind comments you shared with Steve and me. If you can, could you do us a favor? After you finish this episode, text a friend and urge them to listen as well. We're trying to spread the word. Thanks. Have a wonderful week, and I hope you can find time to take advantage of one of the incredible events in Lewes this fall. As Nate said, there's no reason to be bored. Until next time, from our podcast home here at the bar of our beloved Kindle restaurant, this has been We in Lewes, the podcast.